evening from Cozy Corner. Well, it's actually early, wee hours of the morning, wide awake, still jet lagging, and just asking the Lord what's on his heart. And I really believe that God is wanting us to look at our time management. How are we spending our time? And I spoke this morning or yesterday about how after Yeshua, which means God's salvation, I believe the most precious gift that he's given to us besides free will is our time, because moments add up to hours and days. And how are we spending our time? And I spoke about this morning, and are we living a balanced life? And so I do believe we're in the end days. And when I lived on Long Island in New York, I used to hear people talking about, oh, we're in the end days, we're in the end days. And I didn't really have like a witness in my spirit jumping up and down like, yeah. But one of the signs that we are in the end days is that the Jews are making Aliyah. The Jews are moving home to Israel. And this center, this prophetic dance center, is an end times vision, which is why it didn't happen until it did, which was 2 years ago, going on 3 years now, and still astounded where I am strategically located. So I ask you, how are you spending your time? And are you in the center of God's will? And these are questions we need to ask ourselves. This is very important. The other thing I wanted to speak about, and I've been talking about how I just so desire to be transparent, is that I'm struggling in my life. I have great days and I have not so great days, and this is the human condition. I don't care how many years you have been serving the Lord. This body of flesh is not being transformed into anything while it's here on this earth, while I am here living in this body. And so I submit the Spirit of God in me that loves God to him, and I submit the flesh to the Spirit. So the Spirit, every moment of every day, I'm choosing to die daily, so to speak, because that's what Yeshua said. He said if anybody would come after me, he would take up his cross and follow after me, which means that we don't live a self-indulgent life. Do we take vacations? Do we take retreats? Yes, critical for us to recharge our batteries, so to speak, so that we can come back and continue to feed God's people and those who have not yet called upon his name. And so we fill up so we can continue to drive this car, so to speak. We must fill up. Have you been to the filling station today? Years ago, I was speaking on Long Island, and the Lord just gave me that to say, have you been to the filling station today? We must fill up. And so our time on retreats is so critical, and I'm definitely due for one soon. And living in Jerusalem and being back in life, it's hard to just stop and leave and go away. I've always found it difficult to do that. And the place where I used to go on retreat the last couple of years, it's not an option anymore. So the Lord will have to carve out a new place for me. But we need to make sure that we're in the center of his will, which is how I heard the perfect rest of God described, being in the perfect will of God. And I love Psalm 116:7, soul, return to your rest. Rest is so absolutely critical because we don't know what's before us. And if I look back over the last few years when I felt I really needed to rest, and it was a struggle to do so, and I didn't know what was ahead, then I would look back and say, wow, Lord, that's why you had me to rest at that time, because you knew what was ahead. So when God is speaking to you about resting, friend, you better rest. Very, very critical, because we don't know what's coming around the corner, but he does, thankfully. So Our time is a great gift from God. How are we spending it? Are we in anointed relationships, or are we being derailed by the enemy? Because there are relationships that are set up from God for our good, and then there are relationships that are set up from the enemy, not for our good. And so we need to really be discerning, and we need to stay rooted and grounded in God. We need to stay close to God. And thirdly, what I want to talk about is that God's love for us has nothing to do with us. Meaning, I can't earn my way into God's arms. He loves me because He created me. I'm His masterpiece. So there's nothing I can do to impress God or unimpress God. He wants to be with me. That's the purpose of me reading His Word and celebrating Him and adoring Him and revering Him and worshiping and praising and praying, to be with God. But it's not to try to impress Him. It's not because I think I'm not acceptable and I have to do a million different things to be acceptable. I am acceptable to God because of Yeshua, because I received Him as my sin offering, my sin covering, my kippurah, my propitiation, my substitute. He literally became a curse on that tree for me. He died in my place, but He rose and He conquered death on that tree of sacrifice, on that cross. He conquered death. And He appeared to more than 500 witnesses. He was risen from the dead, according to the scriptures, proving that He is God. So let's be thoughtful about our lives, how we're living our lives, who we're spending our time with. Time is a great gift from God. Let's spend it wisely. And I just leave you with this scripture. Yeshua said, I only do what I see my Father doing. Let's be careful that we're not letting our conscience, not our conscience, I don't want to say that, the voices that we hear, the spirit traffic, all that stuff, drive us. We shouldn't be motivated by anything but the voice of God. Let's simplify. And let's be able to tell the difference between codependency, which is the shoulds, and all that's connected to that, or God's leading. And they are not the same. They are completely in two different directions. So sending you love and blessings from the Tabernacle of David Prophetic Dance Center Cozy Corner series.